Alright. Looks good. Shit. What a procedure every time to set this up. Looks good so far. Right. So, alright, I would like to welcome everyone who joins in at the stream. Tonight's topic is mean, badass wizards, and last time we worked on a character called Rasbogast, which is a mixture between Rasputin and Radagast. And as you can see, he is a forest wizard with a lot of stuff on his armor. Yes, I would like to polish this up a little bit and focus my attention also on the next character, which already has a name. He will be called Zanduralf. You can guess whose characters I would like to combine in this design. And I have to get warmed up first a little bit, as it is the case almost every time. Usually I like to paint a couple of sketches that are disposable, but in this case I would like to go straight to designing and hope that this will suffice as a warm-up exercise. Gotta turn on some music, but you probably will not hear it because otherwise I will get an infringement notice. So everyone who wants to listen music is free to do so with his or her own music. So we won't have any, how should I say, disputes in terms of musical taste. And of course, as always, if you have questions, comments, if you like to show me your work, feel free to post it in the chat. Whether you're watching this on Twitch or YouTube, I monitor every chat. Or questions about my technique for this matter. What's really funny for me is it's every time the same. I developed a technique which provokes a lot of happy accidents, and it's a very messy brush stroke technique, but you start to see shapes within the character, and to get to this state where you start to extrapolate the shapes and block them out and make them functional and more interesting, it's such a weird feeling to finally switch this switch in your head to get to this state of mind. And if you're kind of routined with your subject matter, you also start to implement design themes. For instance, some kind of repetition. In this instance, I love this rhythmical structures, this wooden armor like a samurai that appears here and there, so you have a theme going on in your design. But of course, it's a matter of routine. If you're good with the basics and you do what you're doing, know what you're doing, and it's your technique is easy accessible to you, then going to this meta stage of thinking about a design theme is easier for you than when you're a beginner, of course. An interesting source of inspiration for fantasy armor type of designs is LARPing. If you don't know what this means, this is real life LARP, real life action role playing, something like this. So basically, a bunch of people meet up in the forest, dress themselves up as orcs and elves, and battle each other with, how should I say, role playing dynamics and mechanics. And I know that some people don't take this very seriously and laugh at them because they throw, I don't know, super like tennis balls at each other and have to roll the dice and see how much their attack was worth and blah blah blah, again, role playing mechanics. But the effort they put into their costumes is really amazing. And to be honest, I constantly draw inspirations by looking at, Googling LARP pictures, or having my folder at Pinterest with LARP designs. It's quite the work they do. And I think also it's a back and forth. They probably look at concept art and get inspired by it, and concept artists look at LARP pictures and get inspired by it. So it's mutual beneficiaries, whatever the English word is. There's a similar effect going on in the car industry. There are entertainment designers or concept artists for the entertainment industry who design very futuristic cars that might be a little bit unfunctional, but they have prototyping value in terms of form language. And the designers from the car industry get inspired by it, and vice versa. So interesting synergetic effects going on there. Yeah. And I mean, as for now, the design is relatively chaotic, and I like it this way. I don't have any specs to work by, but I would probably reiterate it a couple of times more to give it more some kind of a theme and to separate it in terms of value better from each other, to give the material some more distinction, you know. But since this is just for fun and there is no specific goal, it's just, you know, I leave it at a stage that where I like to look at it. And personally, I love the look of unfinished pictures or very raw painted pictures. So the eye has a chance to interpret the content as you see fit. An interesting thing that I discover every time I paint is the density of detail or the degree of detail. Because for this technique, it's necessary to have a lot of, how should I say, unnecessary noise in your image. Well, the noise is necessary for your brain to interact with the image, but sometimes people have very strong strokes and they have the image planned out in their head, but it doesn't look, sometimes, not always, depends on how routine you are, but it looks too stiff, and I try to avoid this. I'm going for a very specific visual style with a lot of strokes and noise and texture, and then clean it up, so to speak. Create the context first, and then the content, so to speak. And when I start out, I always underestimate how much detail I actually need in terms of get the, you know, brain juices flowing. But funnily enough, the principles for making an image look finished are relatively easy. From from a theoretical point of view, have a texture, create an idea out of this texture, clean it up, flesh it out, give it a sharp silhouette, because this always makes things appear more finished. A sharp, cleaned up silhouette is way more valuable in terms of this finished look than tons of details, because what happens inside the silhouette is not that important. It has to do with our way of perception, but this is a different story. But everything that happens inside the silhouette is basically a play of light. It is geometry that is indicated by lights and shadows and gradients, and you don't have to be necessarily super tight with what is going on inside the image if you're like constrained by time or something like this, because the effect of fleshing out things inside a muddy silhouette is negligible than the opposite. But you can of course separate the elements from each other by a well-used shadow drop, for instance. Sharp shadows always help to indicate geometry, and then you just fill in some scratches, some dust, some little elements, because they also help indicate the geometry and they help give you some finer detail, and they don't have to be that many. Hey, Rosh, hi. For all the people in Twitch, I just realized that my monitor has had a little problem and I don't see if people chat in the Twitch channel, so sorry if I haven't responded to you. Weird. Yeah, once again, I apologize for this. Sometimes the forwarding of the messages is a little bit broken, apparently. But now I see the chat and you can ask me stuff. Damn it. All right. Hey, Lady Agatka. No, it will stay black and white. For now, at least. Yeah, for everyone who has tuned in just recently, I am just having fun with designing two characters, Razbogast and Zanduralf. They are both wizards, and I just want to paint a couple of really, really badass wizards because last time I found out it's difficult to find any who are really badass. Most of them are white and gray and I don't know, not the coolest wizards to be around, I guess. Okay, I just see. Hey, Susuri, yo, thank you very much for hosting. I've just seen the message. Greatly appreciate it. Ah, damn it. Ah, yeah, that's a good strategic choice you have made. I actually might steal this idea from you sometime when I have internet problems, which happens relatively often here in Berlin in the last weeks. Yeah, that sucks. Any idea what's causing the internet problems? Provider issues? Someone chewed through the internet cable? Bad weather? Okay. Sorry, just checking if someone has written something somewhere because apparently my monitoring system is a little bit broken right now, so not sure if people write to me and I don't see it. Oh, I see. Yeah, living in the middle of nowhere is a good argument for a bad internet connection. Just noticed that his arms are way too long. inhumanly long. It's not looking good. No, now they're too short. He looks like a dwarf. Damn it. Okay, better. Better. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't know how much my self-confidence depends on the question if my technique works or not, because sometimes probably every artist knows this. If you can't get into the zone, into the flow, you feel like you have lost your ability to draw, and this can be rather frustrating. And it's maybe just a little minor mistake you're doing. Maybe your strokes are too big, or your brush configuration is off, or something like this, and it can be fixed easily. Man, I have to scale it down. It's too big. Yeah, usually it makes sense to start out with 10-15 minutes of disposable stuff where you know it's alright to make mistakes. The brain is a muscle, it has to get warmed up, it has to get into the state of painting again. But sometimes you have this weird expectations to churn out the best image with like the first attempt, and it doesn't work, and then you lock yourself up in the basement because you think you're a worthless artist. And I've heard this story so often, I've experienced it so often, and artists are so hard on themselves sometimes. Yeah, for the second wizard, Zanduralf, I want to go with a more cloth focused type of design. I want to make him a little bit more clean, a little bit more rich or prestigious, and I hope it will work. Badass and wealthy. Yes, that fits the description. Hey, Laurie, nice to see you around. Thanks for stopping by. Hmm. Looks like he's going to be a little bit more overweight than intended. I'm not sure. We'll see. Everything is disposable. We don't have to stick to it. Yes. Another magician. Yeah, it's two magicians, Rasbogast and Zanduralf. Rasbogast is a Strider type of magician, like a mixture of Rasputin and Radagast, if you are familiar with it. And the other one is Zanduralf, which is obviously a mixture between Gandalf and Saruman. Yes. Kinderschokolade. Maybe. Oh, Ashenable, thank you for your host. Looks a little bit stiff, the pose. It's so funny, you have to pay attention to so many parameters while painting. The pose, the anatomy, the proportions, the design language, the design theme, materials, the genre, the character. I think it's perfectly fine if you don't hit up what you have projected at your first attempt or at the 5th or at the 10th, because there's so many things that have to be covered. And just as an anecdote, I've seen many people expecting from themselves to be able to, create what they have imagined with the first attempt. Because sometimes when you watch the speed painting videos on YouTube, and some kind of professional artists who sketch this stuff out with one try, well, they're extremely specialized on their subject matter. They don't do anything else, so for them it's alright and fine. And they have their weaknesses. Someone who is good with poses and fantasy is not good with science fiction and environmental painting, so they're only showing you their strength. So you don't have to compare yourself and kill yourself with trying to be as good as them, especially if you're, just a hobbyist. You might have other strengths. Oh, Lady Agatka, thanks. It's partly routine and partly the right reference material, because what you can't see is that I have a second screen and I have various pictures for proportional reference. So I'm painting, for instance, I could take this pose and orient myself on this pose and fill it with sketchy design stuff on top of it in one swift process. So I won't lose the proportions. What you could also do, because right now we're just focusing on design. We are not interested in anatomy as much. We just want to have a design. You can just take this picture and make an overpaint. So your mind is only focused on this one, you know, on the design aspect of the things. So it's all a question of how you use your tools. Brushes that feel like, yeah, it's your second question. I think it's interesting to look at the parameters, because one of my favorite brushes is this one. And I assume you know how to make a brush. You can make just, yeah, you know, this kind of textured brush and give him texture in the Photoshop parameters, and maybe, you know, or a dual brush, and this creates a lot of textury kind of brushes that feel relatively traditional. Yes, I do have an ArtStation account. I will post it in the chat. 1 second, please. It's this one. And maybe a little tip for people who are working with line art. I personally, I don't know, I can't get into it, but I have been working a lot with line art. You probably know this. In order to keep the proportions, every pose is a C or an S. Well, this is exaggerated, but you know, you can, if you have your stick figure, you can use this as a basis as well. Actually, this is a cool technique to make it dynamic. You know, you have such things as a contrapose, so that the shoulder line and the hip line are tilted in opposite directions, and this gives the image dynamic, you know. And if you make something like this, you have you can control the proportions way quicker, and then you can draw on top of it, blah 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 blah. You know, I'm just sketching very quickly, but you get the idea. You know, have a scaffolding for your artwork. You don't have to force yourself to do everything in one process. And some artists consider it cheating if you use, you know, different tools, if you use a template or something, but it's not, because in the professional world it's all about the result. You know, it doesn't matter how you got there. You can use photos, you can use 3D software, whatever accelerates the process. Yes, exactly. Yeah, like Laurie wrote it. Divide and conquer is the principle I would go by. Have every step in its own process, so to speak. Anatomy in one process, then the design in the second one, then coloring in the third one, lighting in the fourth one, and so on and so forth. Okay, his feet are way too small. No, he's rich. His how do you say it? His cape has to be intact. Makes it actually difficult. Damn it. Too long. Oops. I don't know. Leave it for later. Oh yeah, you're right. He's faceless. Oops. Wrong layer. Looks weird. But this should suffice for this resolution. It's always good to start out with a very, very small resolution if you're working with you know, a similar technique like this one, because you don't get caught up in details too much, and it's better for the processor. It's, you have to focus on the overall concept. It's just quicker to do. Oh man, thanks a lot. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, I think everyone can choose their own music. Because personally, I agree with you. Sometimes it aggravates me to listen to music I don't like that much, and I assume not everyone is into whatever I'm listening right now. Oh yes. You're right. It will look like Odin. This is a cliche I would like to try to avoid. But maybe one crow or something, or some other kind of bird. Alright, let's give this guy a proper treatment in terms of detail. Oh, he's too tall. I just have to check something really quickly. Okay. Dark blues, dark country. Yeah. Right now I'm listening to drum and bass. It's called. It's an electronic, very progressive and fast music. But sometimes there is a channel on YouTube. It's called Cryo Chamber, and they play atmospheric and ambient, dark, ambient music basically, which is also very inspirational. Yeah, you also get this infringement problem if you try to save your streams. Dunheim. Is this a band or a channel? YouTube Music Maker. Okay, noted. I see. Thanks for the tip. I'm listening to it right now. No, I'm listening it through different configuration. It won't be heard in the stream. Because usually I upload my streams when they're done on YouTube, and I constantly get this copyright notice if I have music in them that is not mine, so I try to avoid this. will have to change his face. I'm not really happy where this is going, but I don't have a solution for it either. Yeah, it's a little bit better now. There was a game in the 90s. It was a fantasy strategy game. It was called Blood and Magic, and it was based upon the Dungeons and Dragons license. And no one knows of this game or has ever heard of it because it wasn't very popular, but it had such amazing, cool hand-drawn graphics and music, and this is one of my main influences for fantasy. Maybe I will someday be famous enough to make, I don't know, an animation, a movie or something about this in this universe. Would be cool. Yeah, the hair, you're right. It needs treatment. He needs to iron out his hair and maybe dye it. Maybe black. Does this work? Black hair and a white beard? Oh no, he will be a metalhead playing in a black metal band. Yeah. Some L'Oreal shampoo or cure. Yeah, this is a good idea. Fade it into white. No, I will leave this for a later stage. I have to take care of the hair first. Thoreal, yes, yes, yes. I actually like this idea, black hair with white beard, because maybe he is a fashion-aware wizard who likes to experiment with hair colors or something. And it gives me a little bit more contrast to work with than white hair and white beard. As for now. Or he uses black magic so his hair becomes black. Who knows? Yeah, it's a good point. Break out of the cliche, do something else. Maybe he plays guitar in his spare time. Or likes to cook for his girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. Yes, he is in his puberty. Maybe he can get 1,000 years old and he is maybe 150 years old. Interesting. Well, I do it actually too. I mean, I dye my hair blonde, but I let my beard be in natural colors. So you are completely right about this fashion trend. Yeah, remember Norman Reedus had black hair in one occasion. Yeah. I mean, men's health is maybe not the best source for fashion if you wear long clothing and have long hair. So, yeah, women's magazines is the way to go in this instance. Let's see. Now for this design I have to think a little bit more, because the other one was miss and match. He just slapped on stuff that he found, but this one he's obviously rich, so there's some system behind his clothes, some symmetry, some artistry. I really love shoulder pads, but they make the wizards look more like warriors, because it's a typical warrior cliche. So not sure if this is going to stay, but as for now the image asks for it. Yeah, I mean, they are a great tool to indicate or to exaggerate the overall silhouette, the overall shape. They make the characters very distinguishable from each other. Oh yeah, it works. Hey Tom Chi, thank you. Thank you. Oh, by the way, this is maybe an interesting tip for artists. This brush I'm using is only half of the trick. I do most of my work with a smudge tool, which creates gradients, as you can see. And gradients is how the light appears in reality. We have always gradients wherever you look like. There is not one homogeneously lit surface in reality. And it accelerates the process also very, very quickly. If you have too much noise and you want to create clearer geometry, I use this smudge tool. And if there is a secret brush, I would say yes, but it's not a brush, it's the smudge tool. Yeah. Or smudge in low resolution. I mean, all in all, I find it really helpful to start out with a low resolution image because you're forced to focus on details. You're forced to focus on the broad concept, not the details. Man, sorry, my English is broken. And details, you can put them later in because they won't save your image if the overall concept doesn't work. And it's faster, it's easier on the computer, it has many advantages. I think I give him black fur on the other side as well, because that creates a theme of materials. Oopsie. This is one really ugly emoji you're using there. Icewind Dale. Never heard of it. Have to check. Ah, interesting. It's probably also the Dungeons and Dragons franchise / license, I guess. A little bit unsure about several parts of the design. But alright. Shit. For 3D modeling, it depends, but I don't model in 3D that much, so I prefer Cinema 4D, to be honest. I mean, usually people say when you're sculpting, you should use ZBrush. If you're doing more mechanical type of modeling, you should use 3D Max. But since I'm not that much into 3D modeling, I would love to model more, but it's just just don't have the time for it. I use Cinema 4D because it's great as a whole package. It's very user-friendly and quick to learn. Man, I hope this is right. Yeah, quick to learn. And I use Cinema 4D for all kinds of stuff, for animation. You can also sculpt with this program, and yeah, I think if you are a beginner or something like this, it's totally sufficient. Um, mm. The problem I had with ZBrush is it takes so much time to understand the UI, and especially if you're not only sculpting, but if you have to transport it into another application and texture it, then it can get really complicated in my experience. And Maya, I hate it. It's so buggy. The renderer always, froze on me and did some weird stuff I didn't like. And it is industry standard, but the kernel is really, really old, and it has so many things that just don't work for me personally. And everything I want to do, as far as I can tell, I can do it with Cinema 4D. But it's just me, Maybe you have a different, how do you call it, specifications. Yeah. Yeah, man. Old school sculpting is awesome. It's different than on the computer, I find, because you have this, haptic sensory thing that you don't have on the computer. You feel the geometry. You can see the proportions in real time and real life. It's a good addition. And if it's a good sculpt, you can still scan it and then have it on your computer in 3D. There's a funny anecdote. I used to work with clay when I was 15, 16, just for fun. And I tried to model my face, and I was sitting there the whole night with a mirror and sculpting. And I created a face. It didn't look like me that much, but I was really proud because I achieved a new level for me. And I showed it to my mother and said like, "Oh, look at this." And I was super proud, and she was like, "Who is this ugly face, who does it belong to? It's so hideous." She was like, "This is super ugly." And I was like, "This is supposed to be me." And she was like, "Nah, doesn't look nothing like you." But like the first instance was, I thought there was some kind of resemblance, or that it is clear that it's supposed to be my face, and my mother didn't recognize it, and it was a little bit weird moment. Mm, Good question. I'm not completely sure yet. I'm trying to figure out how to distinguish them. But yeah, like cloth versus metal would be a theme. I'm thinking more about maybe wooden armor, you know, like a samurai, and more like a cloth metal kind of armor, maybe. But to be honest, I'm not thinking that much about materials right now as I think about overall shapes and overall design themes. This guy has all these bits and pieces, and the other one has more streamlined, more elaborate shapes, possibly. A sage and an eremit. Yeah, man. Someone knows his stuff. Hermit. Yeah. Eremite is the German word, so I assumed that was written correctly. Interesting. How can be a wizard stripped of his powers? Ah, I see. So his powers are tied to an object. That makes sense. Alright, 10 more minutes and then I'm finished with this stream. What I find really funny, this stream is probably a new record. I have between 6 and 8 viewers on YouTube. Partially, I have 15 viewers on Twitch, so you are witness of a new watcher record today. Oh no. 11 chapters. So how many pages were this? How many words approximately? Thank you, Lori. Yeah, thanks for everyone who has hosted my stream as well. Yeah, I think so too. 16 viewers isn't that bad indeed. Whoa. Yeah. I see. Still, 11 times, let's say, what's the average? 35? It's more than 300 pages. That's impressive. But I'm sure maybe what's your plan with this book anyway? Do you want to pick it up once you got your head around the logic of the universe you're creating? Laurie, thank you very much for being here and yeah, entertaining me. Have fun with your training and see you next time. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. there is an inherent passion that can't be stopped to do so, to create things, to express yourself. This is really cool. I mean, I know so many people who are in for the image, of being an artist or being a writer, but they don't want to put in the work. So maybe they're not destined to do it, but there are those who just have to do it, and I think this is a cool, motive. Sure. But it's good that you recognize your talents and recognize your strengths. I mean, some people have talents and abilities, but they don't realize it. Maybe it's a gift, but not a talent. I don't know. But if you know that this is what you want to do, then yeah, stick to it. I would say. My 5 cents. All right. um, I think people misunderstand the word talent, but the question is good. I think talent is, you could replace it with interest and the ability to understand things quickly due to the interest. if you like to do something, for instance, play guitar, there is some inherent drive or attraction to this instrument. This is part of your talent, but you're still suck at the guitar when you begin, right? So your interest, your drive towards this profession makes you train very hard. And I would say talent is the sum of it. It's 99% training, but it's only possible to do because you have this attraction to this, craft. Because I don't know many people who are good at something without this interest. If you see, certain schools where kids are being, I don't want to say forced, but let's say forced to learn a craft, but they're not passionate about it, you can see it in their work. It just looks dead, in my opinion. And there are some people who have a gift. They have the ability to learn something really quickly, but they don't have the interest to pursue it or express themselves with it. So this is just a gift without talent. I hope this makes sense. Yes, exactly. And the thing is, yeah, I'm glad that you like it. Sometimes interest is based on circumstance. For instance, if you do your tax, how it's called, the taxes, the papers for the tax, your income, how it's called, man, your income formula. If you do it in a situation where you don't have income or you don't have anything to do with taxes and taxation, it's not interesting for you. But when you're a freelancer and you try to get as much money out of it as possible, then it will be interesting for you. Yes, I do have an ArtStation page. Hold on. Just have to dig out the link. And to the backed header, don't worry, man. If stick figures convey what you want to tell, then it's justified using them. All right. This concludes this stream. As you can see, we have come up with we finished the second design for Zenduralf. It's an interesting design. I'm not sure if I'm happy with it, but we will continue next time. I'm not sure when the next stream will be, either during the week or next Saturday, 4 p.m. definitely. So once again, I would like to thank everyone who joined in, everyone who hosted me, and I hope to see you around soon. Have a nice day, and good luck with everything. Peace out.